Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the show with the Conservative Party ousting its leader today and choosing a new interim leader in Candice Bergen. Joining me now to discuss this is Paul Wells and Bert Chen. Maybe I'll start out with you, Bert. Obviously, you're a former national councilor for the Conservative Party. Maybe just give, I guess, your overall reaction to the move today to oust Erin O'Toole, which obviously I know you are supportive of based off of, some of your past moves on national council, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, thanks, Wyatt. So I think I'm optimistic today with this change in the Conservative Party. I think the decision made by a large majority of MPs in choosing to remove the leader for the Reform Act does reflect a large contingent of the membership of the Conservative Party. And this is obviously a decision that MPs made over the past 4 months now, where they've been able to speak to their constituents, they've been able to speak to the party members, they've been able to speak to the board members that comprise their electoral district associations, and obviously have judged the actions of Erin O'Toole in making the decision they made today. I'm optimistic. Obviously, Canada is at a crossroads with a lot of issues, whether it's from the pandemic to the economy, and Conservatives need strong leadership to offer to Canadians an alternative to Justin Trudeau. So I'm optimistic that we will find a leader that can deliver that.
And Paul, I mean, obviously, the Conservatives, just picked an interim leader. They just picked Candice Bergen, literally just moments before we, started recording this. Candice Bergen, though, was a close ally of Erin O'Toole. She was the deputy leader under Erin O'Toole. So is she really someone that, should be the new interim leader if, caucus members are looking to, unite the party? And again, they weren't supportive of Erin O'Toole. So is picking, a super close ally of Erin O'Toole really the way to go?
Well, I think this is in the tradition of parties' choices of interim leaders. The interim leader is who you put in place before you make the big decision about the direction of the party. And so it would be unusual to signal a big change in the direction of the party in the choice of the interim leader. Candice Bergen has been deputy to Erin O'Toole. She was a cabinet minister under Stephen Harper, and she did begin to signal a little bit of space between her and Erin O'Toole last week. She came out and endorsed the truckers' protest before he was clear on where he stood. To some extent, her taking a stand on it probably pushed him along towards a point where he felt that he was comfortable taking a stand. I bet that got noticed in the caucus. And but like I say, she's someone who's not considered particularly objectionable by any part of the caucus. And so it's not a huge surprise that she would have been chosen as interim leader.
And Bert, I mean, to your personal perspective, just basically the same question I gave to Paul, but just again, your personal perspective is, Candice Bergen, you're a former national councilor of the party. Based on you working with her, is she, a good choice for interim leader? Because, to Paul's point, interim leader, may not generally be different from the permanent leader. I think, though, that the interim leader in many ways will be, quite important at uniting the party in such an important phase. So again, just is Candice Bergen really, a good choice for interim leader?
Yeah, I would agree with Paul. I think in so many ways, Candice is a consensus candidate, middle of the road. Literally, she's from Manitoba, right, split down the middle of the country. And she's obviously qualified. She's been around for a very long time. I can't remember if she was first elected, when she was first elected, but I believe she would have been in the classes before 2010. She's got more than a decade of experience. In terms of being able to unite the party on this during this process, she's certainly going to be able to do it. And lastly, the consideration we have to look at is the interim leader is someone who is choosing to exclude themselves from the opportunity to be the permanent leader during this leadership process. And I think of the people who threw their hat in the ring, Candice does represent so many things. That's just really the median and middle of what our movement looks like right now.
And I mean, Paul, I'll ask you a question too, obviously relating again to the interim leadership of Candice Bergen. This is obviously thinking sort of hypothetically, but at the same time, something that will have to happen. Candice Bergen was deputy leader of the party, which is obviously an important role. She'll obviously not be able to fulfill that position anymore. With the new interim leader comes, generally some new leadership team members, new shadow cabinet, sometimes new staff within the OLO. How much change are you expecting to see within the leadership team with Candice Bergen being the interim leader, if any?
That's a good question, and I have a hard time guessing. I don't chat with Ms. Bergen very often, to say the least, but I suspect that there won't be a lot of change. Basically, when you're picking an interim leader, you're picking a question period leader for the party, on the understanding that they won't be a candidate for the permanent leadership. They're not going to need to form a campaign organization or craft a message that they're going to take into the next campaign, which means since we're in a minority parliament, and at least theoretically, a campaign could start pretty quick, I suspect the party's going to organize a fairly short leadership process. And she's going to be expected mostly just to hold down the question period operation. There's a good chance she's going to bring in some people who were perceived as being marginalized under O'Toole. Somebody like Mark Strahl, who is one of the most easy to get along people I know, but he managed to not get along with Erin O'Toole. I expect he's going to take now a more prominent position. And there'll be a few like that, but I don't expect her to overhaul the party. She's there to kind of hold the party in place while they figure out who's going to overhaul the party.
And I mean, to you, Bert, as well, obviously we're looking right now at an interim leader. Within, I believe it's a minimum of 90 days that the party has to begin organizing a permanent, leadership, which really isn't that far. I mean, it is 3 months away, but when you think about it, that really isn't that long. How should the party go about picking its next permanent leader? And is there anybody that, you in particular are, keeping your eyes on as a potential leader of the party? And is there anything that the party should do when picking, this next leader that could prevent them from having, the same mistake that they had with picking Erin O'Toole as the leader?
Yeah, so the first part of this is the process to pick the leader. I know for a fact that National Council will be scheduling a meeting within the next 2 weeks, I imagine, which was previously originally scheduled. And under the constitutional amendments that were passed at the last convention virtually in March 2021, the new formula for the Leadership Election Organizing Committee has been set to be to have a mandated count of national councillors representing each of the provinces, each of the regions, so Atlantic Canada, Quebec, Ontario, and Western Canada, and the North. So you'll see representation from current councillors there, and I can only imagine which ones would be interested for that. And then it would be their council's prerogative to appoint further members of LEOC. I would imagine there's got to be some from the current headquarters staff, past interim executive director Jamie Gerard, for example. She's been through this in the last leadership. She may be called upon again for her technical expertise on it. And we'll likely see some representation from the Conservative Fund. We'll likely see a member from caucus. That's maybe MP and Senate caucus. So with the bulk of that committee being National Council, I can only surmise the feedback that I've gained from working with my former colleagues that they would want a quick race. We are in a minority parliament situation. It's kind of a positive that this is happening in February, where you can get a nice calendar year to run this. with some good summer campaigning periods. Setting the criteria, I'm sure there will be a fundraising threshold based off of the feedback last time in the analysis, and those numbers were made before the pandemic. I can only also guess that they might increase that limit and also tie signatures to that, as well as possible separate rounds of qualification like what was done last time.
Or just before I go to Paul, I want to follow up with you on something because, you called for Erin O'Toole to step down as leader. Not long after you were suspended from National Council, now you have, just a couple of days ago, Bob Benson was kind of the MP who, initially started this. Then there was a group of MPs who signed a letter. How much frustration, I guess, is my question, are you feeling that, you did this, you were suspended from National Council, and then these MPs do this, and, they seem to have gotten away with it? Obviously, the difference here is there's close to around 40. I guess the actual vote total was, I believe, 73 MPs who voted Erin O'Toole out. But yeah, I guess I'm just kind of wondering as to, your personal perspective on, kind of what happened to you when you spoke out about it as opposed to what's happening now.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say there's any disappointment or anything. When I put forward the petition, I was prepared for my detractors. I was prepared for the fallout from those who would rally around Erin O'Toole. And I fully appreciated the timing was early, but because of the nature of what I put forward through a petition with a 90-day period and a referendum process, it would have definitely taken longer. I am actually pleasantly surprised that it did not take as long as I expected. In terms of the fallout I received, I would say whenever a public servant, in that case, I represented the membership, when you strongly believe in something that you're doing right, you are willing to put that up and face the consequences. Part of it is as well, it allowed an opportunity for Erin O'Toole's team to demonstrate how they would want to heal the wounds in our party and go forward. And I think what happened to me and Senator Batters, which is a key member of this effort as well in delivering this opportunity, really demonstrated that Mr. O'Toole and his team didn't have the leadership skills to unite the party.
And Paul, I'll conclude with you, give you the last question. In terms of how the Conservative Party has approached things under Erin O'Toole, the biggest, I think, criticism that they received from some people who are frustrated with his leadership is that he kind of tried to make the party too big of a tent and try to support too many types of conservatives. Moving forward, do you think that there is even a possibility anymore to, have social conservatives in the party, to have what can be described as red Tories in the party? Or do you think now what needs to happen is to try and focus on one, key type of conservative in order to win the election? Because with, focusing on, if you were to focus on social conservatives, then you might, anger the red Tories and vice versa.
So there's no magic formula to forming a voter coalition that takes you to power. I've covered 4 prime ministers: Jean Chrétien, Paul Martin, Stephen Harper, and Justin Trudeau. And not only were they very different kinds of people, I think it's almost fair to say that each of them could barely stand the guy who replaced him. They really didn't like, each of them really didn't like the next prime minister. And yet each of them, with the exception of Paul Martin, managed to hold power for some time. And even Martin got reelected once. So that means I don't hold the formula for winning or holding power. But I do know that there's one person who's beaten a Liberal in the last 30 years, and that's Stephen Harper. And what he said is you absolutely need to bring in the traditional progressive conservatives from essentially Toronto and Atlantic Canada. You need to bring in the populist reform current of the party from the prairies. You need to bring in Quebec nationalists whose parents would have been active Roman Catholics, whether they are today or not. And it really helps to be able to bring in new Canadians. And there's different ways of doing that. I think the problem that a lot of people saw with Erin O'Toole, and I was surprised to see it because I found Erin to be a pretty impressive guy, but it was that it just seemed to be purely transactional. Erin seemed never to stop asking, what do I have to give you to get your support? And he would just say that to different people all the time. And Canadians start to think that someone who never stops asking that question, that they're not bringing any ideas of their own to the debate, that there's no person there. There's just a sort of an exchange machine that you put in $5 and you get back 20 quarters. Or 16 quarters if I do, no, it's 20. And so I think a lot of Conservatives are going to be looking for somebody who seems to come from greater conviction, who seems to be more convinced that they have something to contribute, the way Stephen Harper did. But like I say, the specifics are very much up for grabs. And this is way more of an art than a science. And so it's going to depend a lot on each candidate's ability to convince Conservatives that their particular style, their way of doing things is a way that's going to work.
All right. Well, Paul Wells and Bert Chen, thank you for joining me. And obviously, it'll be interesting to see how Candice Bergen approaches things within the coming days and whether or not she changes up the front benches at all. But thank you again so much to both of you for joining me. And it's been great talking with you both.
Thanks very much.
You.